So you mentioned two ways that you tokenize, or a couple of ways, and you have tokenization of shares, you have tokenization of the deed or the contract of the house. Can you dive in a little bit deeper to that? And I think some folks on the call, for reference, some people have no idea what asset tokenization even is,
Yeah,
and
start from scratch.
others definitely understand, but haven't really heard it in this context of doing, actually being able to tokenize a home. Why would someone want to do this? And yeah.
Yeah, good questions. So yeah, to start from start from scratch, right? So tokenization is really just the ability to represent something with tokens on the blockchain, right? So just as we have represented the currencies as tokens on the blockchain, we can now represent securities or assets as tokens on the blockchain. So we get the same benefits that we have with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. We can self-custody the digital currency or asset within our own wallet. We don't need a bank to keep it safe for us or to document ownership of it. We can do it ourselves. We have the blockchain guarantees that we know who owns it. We can also facilitate transactions, right? So we can facilitate trading, different types of transactions, and we could do it in a secure way. And again, the blockchain guarantees where we have the ownership. And if we make a trade, the blockchain ensures that we can trade without counterparty risk, for instance, using a smart contract. And we can do a lot of that stuff outside the banks and outside the exchanges because we have the ability now to self-custody the digital asset, right? So that's a real innovation, I think, that we see behind Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies now coming to the world of assets and securities, where we can do exactly the same. So we don't need to have, in longer term, we don't need to have the land title registry really to document ownership of properties, right? We can do it on the blockchain. In 50 years, maybe, when the legal side catches up. And that's the real innovation. So basically the way that we operate is that we always tokenize the company that owns the property, right? Which sounds like a strange way of doing it and not the most direct way of doing it, perhaps, but it is actually the easiest way to do it right now within the current regulation. Because the securities regulation is very clear in most countries, and in most countries you can also digitize everything within the securities regulations. You can have the share cap table, you can digitize, share certificate, you can digitize, and you can then also normally tokenize it, right? So in most jurisdictions, it is well supported to have a token that represents a share, and then when you sort of move that token from one wallet to another, you can update the share cap table. All of that functions quite well within existing securities regulation in most countries. The wallets, of course, need to be whitelisted, so the token itself is sort of self-governing. When it moves from one wallet to another, it can update the share cap table because it can see that it's moved to a new wallet. The wallet is ID'd and recognized and whitelisted, right? So we can update the share cap table. The token can also control whether it's moved, whether it can actually be moved to a certain wallet. Maybe the wallet is owned by a Russian or someone from another sanctioned country that we don't want to have as an owner of this token here, and then the token itself, it's self-regulating, self-governing, and can sort of block that kind of transfer from happening. So there's a lot of benefits in that, and there's a lot of ability sort of to automate transactions. So the main reason why you would tokenize your property is that you can really digitize and automate processes to a great degree. So you can make like a crowdfunding platform like the one we provide, where people can just log in and pay using crypto and get the tokens corresponding to ownership in the asset, the property, into their own wallet, and that transaction can happen completely within the platform itself. It can happen completely without any administrator effort. So it's fully automated. The same thing with the trading. So the trading can be facilitated by a platform like ours, and you can have people trade in a peer-to-peer fashion without counterparty risk, fully automated by the system with no involvement from the administrator. And then you could say longer term, of course, because all of us use the same standards. So the tokens that we issue from our platform can be deployed and used, give value in other platforms like exchanges. So we just did a project with T0 where we tokenized a property in Texas, and then it subsequently was listed on the T0 exchange for liquidity. And longer term, as mentioned before, we will also gain access to the DeFi lending ecosystem, right? So that's sort of hopefully the first part of the question. The other part of the question was, why not just tokenize the title directly? The reason for that is that there's a couple of reasons. The first one is that the land title register is normally not really digitized and interoperable or integratable, which would be a strict requirement to be able to do it. Even if it was possible to somehow integrate with the land title registry, there would still be the issue of what would you actually sell the investors, right? And how would you legally represent what they are actually buying into? So if you take a title of a property and you issue, you basically fractionalize it and you divide it into 10,000 tokens, what would those tokens basically represent? You'd need to have quite a complicated investment contract drawn up by a legal guy to regulate value appreciation, distributions of dividends and rental income. What happens if someone wants to leave, or the property is acquired, or the property burns, or something like that? It is extremely complicated, right, to do that and to make that kind of investment contract. And it would be very difficult for investors to understand it. They would need to consult their own legal counsel, right, to understand that investment contract and decide whether they should invest into the project, because there are no standards around it. The only standard that we have today that has worked for hundreds of years, is to tokenize a company, right, and tokenize shares. So that is actually easier, both from a legal perspective and also from an investor protection standpoint, I would say. So yeah, long answer, but hopefully it helps.